G'day, it's Bill here from Optics Central. As you can see, I'm at home today, kind of coronavirus stuck in. Today we're doing a quick video on how to put one of these basic EQ mounts together. This one's an EQ2. It's from work, so all the pieces aren't necessarily going to be there, but I'll see if I can explain it to you out of as it comes out of the box. Okay, we're going to start. We've started with the tripod. We've got the tripod stuck together, and it's roughly level, and it's on the ground. It's not fully extended. Generally speaking, it's better to leave them a little bit lower than it is to raise them to the maximum height. They're a little bit more stable that way. Okay, so now I've just got all the parts over there as they come out of the box. I'm just going to start building them onto the top of this mount, and we'll see how we go. Okay. The first thing, I'll get out of the screen. The first thing we do is we're going to get the head. Now the head, as it comes out of the box, the head is in this funny shape. They've sort of squashed it together, so you have to unlock it in a few different ways and turn it the right way around. And so you have to turn it that way. Just lock that down. And now it goes onto the mount like that. We've got a bolt underneath. The bolt goes like that. Now I'll just get my head in the way. Sorry about that. I'm not going to bother polar aligning this yet. I might show you that later on. However, for polar aligning, that direction there, let's go around this way. That direction there has to be due true south if you're in the southern hemisphere, of course, like we are. So that's about roughly right. Now, next thing we have to do is raise this, and there's a bolt that does that. Here we go. Now I'll just, like I said, I'm not polar aligning this exactly, so I'm just going to get it sort of roughly the right angle, so we'll organise that later. As you can see, this sort of raises the altitude as we go. It's a long bolt. You can see our outside, we've got insects on. Okay, there we go. So that'll do for the moment. I'm not quite sure where we need to be. I think we're at 38 degrees. That's sort of probably a little bit low still, but that'll be fine. Next thing we do is we've got to get a counterweight. Now the counterweight goes on here. So now there's a little safety bar here, a safety bolt here. We'll just take that off, and that goes in there. Just has to be finger tight. And we've got the counterweight itself. Now for the telescope that I'm going to put on it, the EQ2 mount comes with a whole pile of different telescopes. The one that I've got is a 13065 reflector, but it could be any sort of refractor or reflector. What that means is they all weigh different amounts, so the counterweight probably has to be in different places up and down. I'll show you how to balance them out momentarily. Okay, next thing we have to do is we'll put one of these guys on. I only have one. I wasn't able to find one in the office. The one that we'll put it on is this here. This is an axis adjuster. Or it's also known as a slow motion control. I'll just undo that, and there's a little flat section just there. I don't know if the camera can pick it up, and that will match up with the screw in this thing. So what you do is just slip it on there, and you twiddle it backwards and forwards so that hopefully that will be nice, and there you can see it's moving there. That's a slow motion control. Okay. Next thing we need is the tube rings. Now the tube rings are obviously going to be specific to the telescope you've got. If you've got a smaller refractor telescope, it's going to be smaller than this. This is for a 13065, so it's 130 millimeters of aperture. You will get obviously the tube ring that matches your telescope. Now, one of these things goes like that, and I'll just go around here again. I keep on blocking the camera. Great camera work. just put it finger tight for the moment. I've got a shifter. I'll fix it up later. See if I can not drop this one on the ground. There we go. Pop them in there. Right. Now let's get the shifter. Tighten these up. Okay, now I'll just open up these tube rings and put on the telescope. Like I said, this is a telescope that we got out of the shop. So it's a Saxon 13065. It does not have a finder scope, so we'll just have to deal with that one, I'm afraid. Squash him on there. There. And that, at its most basic, is the EQ2 mount all put together. The parts that you're going to need to know about, this here is the RA knob. As you can see, you might be able to see it, as I twist this, it just adjusts nice and gently. Now this one will go all the way around, and that'll just all adjust all day. Now, on the other side of this axis here, where my finger is, there, this is where the a second you can put a second adjustment, the slow motion control that pops out like that. I don't have one. I just grab the wheel as I've shown you there. Let's see. These two are clutches. Let's see, the top one is the clutch on the declination. If I undo that one, I can then rotate that. It rotates nice and freely. Once I lock it up, then the slow motion control takes over. And we should be able to just see it moving nice and gently there, right, like that. The second clutch, this one is the right Ascension, and that moves this way, like that. And again, once that clutch that's tightened up, then the slow motion control can take over. Now this slow motion control, by the way, or the cog on the slow motion control, you can put a motor on this, which will lock onto that. As you can see, it's a cog, and there's just a small cog wheel that will drive this nice and gently, so that once you've got it set up, aligned to the stars, it will track the star quite nicely, keeping whatever you're looking at in the field of view. You'll notice that when I unclutch this, notice it's too heavy. See that? It's too heavy. So balancing the scope, this is balancing it in RA. Generally, if it's scope heavy, then the weight has to come up a fraction. Let's see. Let's see, I think I might have oh, sorry, I was wrong. It has to go further on. That's about right, actually. It's possibly a little bit scope heavy still. We might need a second counterweight eventually, but that's probably close enough. To balance the scope in declination, you just let it sit sideways, and it's pretty much okay. Just send it over there. It's slightly stiff there, but that's close enough to being in balance. To rebalance it, you just undo these tube rings, let them loose a bit, and just roll the whole telescope up and down a bit. If you're going to put a camera on there, you're going to have to rebalance it, because it's going to become very heavy at this end. And if it's too heavy, as a big DSLR is going to be probably too heavy for this mount, you might have to roll the eyepiece down here underneath there, so that the camera sits there. Otherwise, you're going to have sort of a large amount of weight out to the side, which you don't want. Okay, I think that's about it. Have a little break and then come back and talk about polar alignment.
Okay, here we are talking about polar aligning your equatorial mount. This is an EQ2 mount, which is very similar to an EQ1. It does go all the way around. The EQ1s you actually have to move the tripod legs. This one's got a little adjustment at the bottom. The EQ3s, 4s, no, there's no EQ4. The EQ3s and 5s and 6s and the 8, I think, have a peg, which you can adjust off, but this one you just have to twist and clamp. Now, with polar aligning, the trick is to imagine yourself looking through a hole drilled up this axis here. This is the main axis, we call it the polar axis. If you were to look from here out there, you would be looking towards the south celestial pole. Now, actually, some of the larger ones have a telescope that you can actually put in there, and you can look up to look at some of the stars. There's some very dim stars up there called sigma octans. This one we don't have that ability, but it's okay. This one's just for visual use. We're not going to get all that accurate. Now, so the first thing we have to do is get this thing pointing towards true due south. Now, I've set up the camera over there so that it's looking over the shoulder of the mount, and I think a little bit further down there, I think it's roughly where that big post is. That's where true due south is. So I'll just dial that in like that. As you can see, it's pointing off that way. You're looking at the post. So that's what we call the azimuth, the left-right adjustment. Now I'm going to change the camera angle so you can see it from the side now. Here we are. We've got it more or less pointed true due south. Now what we have to do is get this angle correct so that we can look again through here, out there, and see the south celestial pole, north celestial pole if you're in the northern hemisphere, obviously. Now, the adjustment we're looking at is this one here. This raises and lowers the altitude. Now, there is because we've got the counterweight on, it's pulling itself down that way. I don't have the telescope on because you can do it while the telescope's on. In fact, it's probably preferable that you do. It stuffs up my camera angles, so I'll just leave it off. This will lift on its own like that, and there's only one pin here that will that lifts it. So now, what we need to do is we figure out our latitude. Now we're in Melbourne in Australia. That's about 37.8 degrees of south latitude. Now there is a scope, not a scope, a dial on the back of this thing here. It's not terribly accurate, I've found, so it's better to use your phone. If you've got a phone, you might be able to find there's what we call an inclinometer on this phone. So we want to move it so that it's around about 38 degrees. So you just pop that on there, and as you can see, it's about, whoops, go back. As you can see, it's about 20, 30 odd degrees here. So we just sort of crank it, 31, 32, oops, just got to hold it steady, 33. This is almost a two-person job, 35, 36, 37, just about 38, and just back it down a fraction. There you go. Okay, so that is now 37 degrees or 38 degrees above the horizontal, pointing true due south. And that's all there is to it. All you need to do now is put your telescope on, and then when your telescope is on, you find your star by unlocking this and unlocking that, and oh look, the star's up there. And from now on, when you've got your star in view, the only thing you need to do to keep that star in track is move this one here. If you're lucky, you've got one of these dongle things hanging off the other end. You might be able to twiddle that one, but yeah, this one here. And in fact, if you've got a motor here, it will turn this gently, just at the right speed in the right direction for you to track the star as well. It's as simple as that.